getting myself into the holiday spirit of things, watching the few things that I kind of watch every year, trying to pick up on some new things, see where that's at. There isn't much that's really 100% new out. I just did an entry about the Santa Clauses. I haven't watched the other ones that came prior to that. I've watched a lot of my, basic ones that I added to my list of, regular holiday films. I watched both Christmas Chronicles. All these films are just, they're staples in holiday movie watching. Is this new one going to be added to the list? More than likely not. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that it's bad by any terms of saying that it's not worth sitting through. Maybe you'll find it, in your enjoyment pool of things that maybe you'll add it to your holiday watch list. But truthfully, I'm kind of along the lines of just about everybody else. It's kind of mid-range to me. I feel like if you made the story for what it is and didn't have the musical aspect, it'd probably be a bit better. And that's not to say that the music isn't good. It's just that it almost sometimes feels forced. And even though they sort of make a bit of a joke about the fact that it's a musical throughout the film a lot, it doesn't really hit on the same page that you would think it does. At least for me, it didn't. Maybe I was expecting a little bit more out of what is supposed to be the very first time Will Farrell and Ryan Reynolds have done a film together. And for this to be it's a little upsetting because they're two huge forces. They're two on-screen, masters of what they do and what they put out. Even though a lot of people can probably say that Ryan Reynolds has this certain way about him that he can get sort of typecasted into the way that he, speaks, the way that his dialogue comes off. But truthfully, it's a little bit more of a charm to me for Ryan Reynolds to do it, the same way that Will Ferrell has a certain charm. Whereas when he picks up a role, even if it is kind of feeling like it's very Will Ferrell-y, it still can be taken to, find itself enjoyable. One of my favorite Will Ferrell movies is not even one of his comedies. My favorite Will Ferrell movie is Stranger Than Fiction. I should actually do an entry if I haven't already on Stranger Than Fiction. That's a very, very good movie. But, Will Ferrell is known for comedies. Ryan Reynolds is known for Deadpool. He's known for comedy actions. He's known for taking, a little bit of lightheartedness in an action film, though he does usually, after his whole stint with romance comedies, he's gotten more into the action comedy kind of realm. And I don't think he's really done anything too serious, except for maybe the Amityville Horror remake, which isn't the best. He also did a film, Buried, which I thought was fantastic, but that's not really critically well received. I loved Buried. I should do an intro on Buried too, but I'm digressing a little bit. It's the idea that we're finally getting these two forces put together. You got Will Ferrell and you got Ryan Reynolds. Should be a no-brainer. However, it's just, it misses on a few things that I feel maybe it's to this film's detriment. Now, when I talk about this film's detriment, it really does fall onto the realm of where the music is coming from. The realm of where the music is coming from isn't necessarily maybe what people dislike about musicals. I feel like a lot of people might dislike musicals to the extent that they don't want it to be people singing and talking, like what you kind of get from Broadway shows that are turned into musicals. But even some of those can translate really well because the music is really good. West Side Story is a fantastic example of that. This Broadway play that became a classic film from the 70s or 60s, and then they just did the remake that was done by Steven Spielberg, which was also fantastic. So musicals have a place, and music has a place in films, especially Christmas films, when done right. I think a good done musical for Christmas is something that's kind of the example of what Jingle Jangle brought to the table. Jingle Jangle is a really good holiday musical, and I feel like this was sort of trying to be that, but also trying to make fun of it at the same time, because there's parts where they sort of break their own sort of fourth wall, in a sense, to make fun of the fact that they're singing along to a bunch of shit. So it kind of misses when it comes to wanting to be a musical, but also be a comedy and also be a holiday movie and also be, and here's where I think it really does succeed. it's also trying to be this reimagining of A Christmas Carol, which I wasn't really expecting. Even from the trailers itself, I don't really think it gives off this feeling of being a Christmas Carol movie. I think a lot of what they were trying to boast about it was that it was Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds in a comedy that had music. That's about Christmas in some way, shape, or form. Maybe I don't remember a lot of what the trailer offered, because I kind of was just like, I saw it once, didn't need to see it again, and I was just like, okay, can't wait for this movie to drop. It dropped a couple of weeks ago, and finally get to sit down and watch it, and I'm not going to say I was disappointed, but I'm not going to say it's something I'm going to rewatch unless I have to show somebody the film and then go through it again. And even if I do that, maybe I will find a different appreciation for it, but it's still just missing something that isn't giving it the quality that I feel the first time Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds team up should deserve. And again, as I was saying before, I digressed on another tangent. It's a good reimagining of A Christmas Carol. The format of A Christmas Carol is the man who's, basically an old, shriveled, decrepit human being who doesn't care about others and doesn't want to give anybody he's just a really old, mean son of a bitch. He gets visited by 3 ghosts on Christmas Eve, and they kind of make him turn his life around and be a better man, so to speak. This is kind of taking that aspect, and it's making it where they don't only do that once. And it's sort of this concept that they've been doing that for centuries. And the only one that's kind of well known is the story that Charles Dickens wrote in the 1800s that became A Christmas Carol, which also goes to show you that, if Charles Dickens wrote it that many years ago, it's meant to show you how long they've been doing that for. They don't really say how long it has been going on for, but they do make it sound like it's almost this, they have the ghosts and it's their job, they pass on to the next life, and this is what they do. They kind of try to change people from being real assholes to kind of be more mindful of human nature and be more accepting of kindness and be kinder in and of itself to those around them. And it's wrapped around the idea of the Christmas spirit, and that's why they do it around the Christmas time, and they kind of prep in a way almost like a lot of the portrayal of how Santa's elves get ready to start prepping for Christmas the day after Christmas, and how in A Nightmare Before Christmas they're trying to prep for the next year's Halloween the day after Halloween. This is sort of the same thing. They start prepping for the next haunt, as they call it, for the next year's haunt, the next person they're going to have the haunt for, to kind of change them to be a more suitable human being in society. So Will Ferrell plays one of the ghosts, and Ryan Reynolds plays the guy they decide to haunt to kind of change it around. Now, it's still relatively new, and I know a lot of people probably haven't watched it, so I'm not going to say too much about the story, but essentially go into it thinking that it's Will Ferrell as the ghost of Christmas Present, and then it's Ryan Reynolds as the man who they're trying to haunt, and it's this aspect that kind of gets things, twisted and turned around, and they throw in a bunch of musical numbers. And again, the music, it's good sometimes, and then sometimes it's not. And I don't know if it's the idea that maybe it's Will Ferrell doing it. I know how I felt when I saw Hugh Jackman sing for The Greatest Showman. That threw me off guard, but it was fantastic. I remember seeing Jingle Jangle and seeing Forrest Whitaker sing for the first time, and that was fantastic. So I got that same feeling when it came to Will Ferrell, but then it didn't turn out to be exactly what I was expecting. It didn't hit the way, say, Forrest Whitaker or Hugh Jackman does. Even though I'm pretty sure they all still have some sort of theater background, and even Ryan Reynolds does a little bit more decently when it comes to singing, but it's still just something that I didn't really expect. And I'm guessing they wanted to do that so they could do this holiday movie and make it a musical, and not only just team up for the first time, but also show that they can have a little bit more range to their comedy. And it's almost like the things that you might hate about musicals, they do better than trying to not be like musicals and do worse, if that makes any sense. If you hate when musicals are all just them talking and singing at the same time, they do that, but that sounds better than when they just kind of more than often break into these musical numbers to kind of keep the story going. It's entertaining and it's worth sitting through at least the one time to get your own feel for it, to make the determination if this is going to be something you watch on a regular basis. There are a couple of plot points that I don't 100% get, that I think are, holes in its story, but I'm not going to go too deep into it because it is just supposed to be a Christmas movie, and going deep into it is going to ruin some of the things that I kind of don't want to ruin. I'd rather you just go and kind of give it a chance, just so you can give it your you can put your eyes on it and give it your opinion. Go into it expecting another version of A Christmas Carol, which I've said it in a couple of entries so far. I praise twisting around these ideas that have already existed to freshen them up and make them something else that might be more entertaining, or might be a really cool and interesting and intriguing new way to tell the story. This is all of that, but maybe it didn't have to be a musical. And I do hope that Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds do get together again for another movie, and maybe it's something a little bit different. It isn't a Christmas movie or a musical. We just get to see them have their on-screen chemistry and just be themselves in maybe a comedy. That I would appreciate. I don't know if it's going to happen, but for now we have this, and if this does well enough, critically, maybe they'll at least take that as a hint that Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell do work, and they'll do work together, and they'll do more with them. But as far as what this brings to the table, I think it's just going to be this mediocre Christmas movie for a few people to watch every year. That's just me. I don't see myself rewatching it every year for Christmas like I do my normal Christmas movies that I rewatch every year.